It's not easy with the ceilings to project. Huh?
So I was saying, Pop?
Huh? You can't even hear me at this late? Yeah. Okay. My name is Nola Masterson, Managing Director of Science Futures, Inc. Currently, I'm investing out of a fund called Portfolio Femtech Fund. It's the 6th fund that Portfolio has raised. It's an angel fund. And we're investing in things that women want to see in the world, in the area of healthcare and tech, or how they come together. So I have an esteemed panel of 3 gentlemen. So I'm your token, and I'm going to let them tell you what they do. And we should have a lot of fun because it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you guys have been here all day. So let's have some fun with this panel.
Hi, I'm Akil Sekwecha. I'm a partner at Cleveland Clinic Ventures, which is a newly formed group at the Cleveland Clinic. Prior to that, I was at Artemis Ventures, which is based here in the Valley. So at the Cleveland Clinic, for those of you who don't know, it's a large organization, 20 plus hospitals, about 60,000 employees, and almost 4,000 physicians. A lot of the stuff that we've done historically has been internal innovation. The key opinion leaders are developing either inventions on devices or on therapeutics, sometimes on healthcare IT. We also have something called Learner Research Institute, which is about 1,500 scientists and 200 principal investigators that are doing things on research from basic therapeutic and animal research, preclinical research, all the way into phase 2 trials. So the clinic overall encompasses kind of an A to Z piece around medicine, from basic research all the way to clinical care and advanced clinical care. The Ventures Group came about in partnership with the Innovations team, which does a lot of tech transfer. The Venture Group, currently the mission is financial returns based on internal innovation. This year we're looking to do some external deals in some limited capacity and then take it from there. And check size for us, typically on the internal side, so far has been 500 to about 2 million, with reserves of 10 to 15 on those companies. As we look at external, we'll probably look at later stage deals, and those may be $5 or $10 million checks.
My name is Josh Phillips. I'm a managing partner at Catalyst Health Ventures. We're in Boston. We invest in early stage medical technologies, some diagnostics, and some other healthcare technology. The way we look at it is primarily engineering type solutions as opposed to pure wet science. Molecular diagnostics sort of violates that a little bit, but we can be loose with our definitions when we need to be. And so, as I look at diagnostics, as we think about diagnostics, it kind of spans a number of different areas. On one hand, where we have traditionally looked as a fund is in very specific novel molecular diagnostics that are either diagnosing something that currently cannot be diagnosed today, or generally that's sort of the category, but it's a new novel molecular diagnostic approach. There are also tools or devices that may fit into diagnostics that provide access to a particular area of the body to enable a diagnostic. So we'll lump that into that equation as well. And then there's sort of the instrumentation to perform the test. We've done some investments in that space, although today we're probably not really all that interested in the instrument side of the equation. Never say never, but that's not a real area of interest. So it's either on the device that's providing access, providing a sample that can't be collected today that is of some real and clinical importance, or on the novel test side of things.
So I'm Rick Gordon. I'm a director at Innova Strategic Investments. Innova, if you're unfamiliar, is the largest health system in Virginia. It's not a huge system, but significant in size. I think we see about 2 million patients every year. You can't hear me in the back?
Come on, move up. We don't have mics, so you have to move up. There's plenty of seating right in the front row, so we really want to make this intimate.
It's funny, if you,
Robbie, way to go, thank you.
if we were where I grew up, I would accuse you of being a Baptist.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie.
I'll speak up though. Let's see. So we invest, it's a $150 million balance sheet commitment. It's relatively new. We invest three ways. We have 6 LP positions and other health-focused funds. We make later stage direct investments, so anything Series A and later. We'll make as co-investors, generally looking for a strong venture lead, and in seed we will lead. And I spend most of my time actually looking for really strong seed deals. And if you think about sort of the ecosystem where we exist, it's near NIH, near NSF, so a lot of research and development going on. It's somewhat orphaned given sort of the lack of a seed venture ecosystem in the Mid-Atlantic region, and we're really committed to filling that gap. From a diagnostics perspective, we are absolutely willing to invest in that segment. In general, I think our investment thesis is what you would expect out of the Mid-Atlantic. We're looking for capital-efficient companies that we can get to copy one to market for, at a price that we can afford. So generally, not large molecules, no biotech. For medical devices, not many implants. If it is, it would be a later stage investment for us. But around diagnostics, so a couple of areas that are of interest to us, certainly point of care diagnostics, anything that would allow us to change the care pathway in a way that, one, it improves outcomes for the patient, or two, reduce our liability or our costs. So think the ability at point of care to identify quickly whether a hospital-acquired infection is, for example, MRSA. And that would definitely impact our ability, or the way that we would treat that patient, perhaps saving money, perhaps triaging in a way to prevent the expansion of MRSA. Let's see, also molecular diagnostics. We have a new cancer center, but it's strategically important to us. Complementing that is we are bringing in-house our own molecular diagnostics capability. We used to ship those things out. We're now doing more and more of them in-house. And so when there are new tests that are being developed that can identify what the issue is. We have an interest in investing in those kinds of molecular diagnostics. We'll talk about reimbursement, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So always with from an investment perspective, a keen eye toward what the reimbursement pathway is. It can be difficult.
There's no mic in here, so you have to come up close. Thanks, Ruth. And just for all the panelists here, I'd like you to kind of go over what you think the current landscape is. I know you did it a little bit in your introduction, but maybe if you could say, what does the funding landscape look like in your particular domain or your particular area? Mid-Atlantic, Cleveland, I would call you Mid-Atlantic.
Midwest.
Midwest. Josh, you Northeast, okay, and I'll talk.
So ours are probably similar.
Yeah.
Yours are very different.
It sounds different, doesn't it? Just talk a little bit about how in your view, has the landscape changed recently? And what are some of the early stage companies on your radar screen now?
Oh, so you may go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's funny. I think across the U.S., clearly the appetite for investing in diagnostics-based companies has changed. By the way, health tech investing has, at least in the early stages, declined dramatically over the last 2 years. I think we've seen the bottom of it the last quarter, so we'll start to see that rebound. But I think diagnostics has probably been impacted, more than disproportionately, certainly than other segments. That's the bad news. So we tell our entrepreneurs in the Mid-Atlantic region is the good news is it's always sucked here, so you wouldn't really know that there's less money. and that's actually only a little bit of hyperbole. It really is challenging in the Mid-Atlantic region. Now, what our entrepreneurs, because they're clever, what they do is they're really good at getting grant funding. And so, they go, NSF and NIH are just down the street, and so this becomes quite an industry, in our region where they continue to get that additional funding to get through different trials. Now, commercialization is a different issue, really does require capital. And so, so the new news is that, an organization like Innova, which has a big balance sheet, is stepping up. To start to, not only from our own perspective, make those investments, get a good position on the cap table, but we are also actively building syndicates to co-invest alongside Innova. That could be the LP positions that we've taken, and it could also be other health systems. So I'm really excited about Cleveland Clinic and their ability to look at investments from outside the clinic, because I absolutely intend to take our best deals to them.
John, how about you? What's your landscape look like?
Well, so we invest across the U.S. We're based in Boston, but we invest really anywhere in the United States. And I would say that maybe not just the last couple of years, but the last decade or half a decade, just it's got continually harder and harder for diagnostics, and particularly molecular diagnostics. I'll say that the content aspect of the equation. Because that's really where you look probably the most, or where we think of it the most. And I think the problem has largely been one of a lack of a financing ecosystem, if you will, that brings these companies through all the way, because it's what we have seen with our companies is it's very difficult to get an exit until you have actually built up enough revenue to either go public or be a really easy acquisition for one of the very few diagnostic companies out there. There just aren't that many. And they're not willing to take a whole lot of early risk unless they see a really big opportunity. So there are very few of those. So what we've been, you asked what are we looking at right now? Not actively any companies. There isn't anything that meets our criteria. I think, in everything we do, whether it's a device or diagnostic or any product, everything that we invest in has to be a substantial improvement for the patient in terms of outcome, a substantial reduction in cost, which if you think about diagnostics in theory, they fit that perfectly. However, there's no way to finance it not no way, but it's very difficult to finance that. Reimbursement is really difficult. I guess what I'm saying is, to the extent you can do things like get grants and get to a position where you have proven, validated your test, proven the clinical value of this test, it's going to be really difficult to get venture. And we're an early stage venture firm, and we probably wouldn't do it until you're at that stage. So I hate to be so negative about it, but unless it's a enormous breakthrough opportunity with real crystal clear clinical value and high probability of success, it's very difficult to get an investment at the earlier stage.
So I agree with Josh and Rick. I think if I was to look at the Midwest and Cleveland in particular, we're really good at early stage things, meaning we can get money together for the seed, the pre-seed, the seed. There's small funds, there's family offices, there's angel syndicates. We can get something off the ground. Getting velocity enough to get to Series A of any meaningful size is harder in the diagnostic area. Part of what we're trying to do at the Cleveland Clinic, so I'm gonna separate it into two. So if I talk first about internally, when something gravitates up through the invention pipeline that we have, we start looking at it to say, is there a company here or not? And when I say is there a company, it means it's got to hit all of the large market size. It's got to really solve a meaningful clinical problem and have potential for what we think is a reasonable regulatory path and even potential for reimbursement, which puts a higher onus on it. But that being said, we will look at funding those companies, we'll look at syndicating those companies, and we're prepared to finance them even by ourselves initially if we have that conviction. But a lot of times the stuff we're seeing may not actually meet that company threshold. In those situations, what we're doing is we're funding in a combination of both the clinic's money as well as some non-dilutive funding to get that project off the ground, and then try to license it or figure out a royalty agreement with the strategic. Now, when we look at what we're thinking about externally, those are going to be later stage deals, and which means that we've de-risked some of the regulatory things, maybe even the reimbursement may be a question, and that'll be something we're going to try to grapple with. But anything we do at that stage, externally, later stage, will have to have a strategic impact on the clinic as well. And so in that sense, we really want to make it something where the clinic and its brand can enhance that company, and really, through our key opinion leaders, through clinical trials done at the clinic, we can really add the value necessary to build that company. Now, when we look at and maybe I'll give you actually an example of a company we have. So the clinic actually had a diagnostic exit last year, Cleveland Heart Labs, which was a company formed around certain proteins that were around cardiac disease. And there's a pipeline of other biomarkers that they had. They were acquired by Quest. We have another diagnostic company called Cleveland. The first one is Cleveland Heart Labs. The second one is Cleveland Diagnostics. The Cleveland part of it I don't understand as much, but that's the way they chose their name. Totally separate entrepreneurs. I can't explain it, but the second company actually is doing a test around separating proteins based on structure through a biphasic aqueous solution. And the first go-to-market is around PSA, and they've really got really good data. And the reason I bring this up is this was something where the clinic leveraged its clinical capacity on the clinical trial side. So they did a multi-center trial. The company was able to get the chairman of the Glickman Institute of Urology, which is the #1 institute in the country for urology, to be the PI, non-biased, no ownership, no equity on his part. And they managed to get Johns Hopkins in the study, they got Kaiser in the study, they got large community urology practices, and one in Chesapeake, one in Michigan. And they did a pilot study of about 270 patients. They did a validation study of double that, and the data was really good. And so that was something where on the clinic side, we really leveraged the brand, we funded the company, and now that the data looks good and better than what else is out there, we're trying to build a larger syndicate around that. And so that's just an example of what we could do with on the diagnostic side. But that being said, it is, for us to look at doing a diagnostic investment, it's got to solve such a big problem. And really, for me, I'm very attracted to oncology, and the screening market is really something that is appealing, especially if you can do something at a low cost.
And the oncology market is still the darling of everybody. In our neck of the woods, in the West Coast, we have a consortium of investors on the angel side that have invested in things that women want to see in the world. And one of those was a diagnostic company called Envision, which diagnoses early ovarian cancer. And it was a first-time entrepreneur, a woman who developed the idea for the company. She was financed by Catalyst Ventures, Astia Venture Capital, Portfolio, the company I'm with now. And with only $17 million, she was able to get enough data that Boston Scientific bought the company out last fall for $50 million. So we got a 2.5 return on that investment. 150, sorry, yeah. 150. So that can happen. I'm the voice of hope and reason in the world, because there are problems in the diagnostic area that there is no hope for, and ovarian cancer early stage is one of them. So I think if you take some of these unmet needs and you put a solution to them, you will find an exit and you will find backers. I'm also looking at something out of the Fogarty Institute right now, which if it works is a called radiant oximetry. It's a fetal monitor that goes to on the abdomen of the woman and can give you the oxygen saturation as well as the baby's heartbeat. Those two things are not available with any device right now, but should we be able to make this and have it work and validate it, I think it would become state of the art. So I think that's what you have to look for in diagnostics, is things that replace something with a better idea, or something that's not available, and if it was, it would be taken up. So that's kind of the landscape we look at when we look to an investment. We also look for women entrepreneurs.
I
Yeah.
was going to say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Can I elaborate a little on
Oh,
Envision
please.
when we get to it?
Yes. No, go right ahead.
So Envision is actually my partner Darshana who led that deal.
Yeah.
And earlier I talked about devices that give you access to something, or content, or the different areas of diagnostics. And that one is a device that allows an OBGYN to access the fallopian tubes to collect cells that can then be used to diagnose or to see if cancer is present or not. And that is a thesis that we like. We have another company called Allegro Diagnostics that we have that because you cannot access the periphery of the lung very easily to get samples, this was a genomic test from the airway that could diagnose cancer without having to do that. So it was trying to solve the access problem. In the case of Envision, it was actually a device to provide that access. In the case of Allegro, it was a genomic test to get around the fact that you can't get that access. So that type of a thing is interesting to us. And one of the nice things when we talk about reimbursement with Envision was actually a device.
Mm.
So it was a 510K clearance from the FDA, and it was a cell collection device of which there is reimbursement for a cell collection device. So even though it's a diagnostic, the company was really a device company and fit within the reimbursement profile and the regulatory profile of a device company. So that made it a different play than, if it was developing a panel of genes to diagnose ovarian cancer, that's a whole different ballgame. So.
And since we're such an intimate group, Darshana is also lead investor in the Femtech fund with me in portfolio, and she said when she saw this Envision opportunity, she told her partners that she was going to use her own money to invest. And then they said, well, we'll get on board. And she really didn't know where she was going to get $200,000. So that was a bluff play on her part. I don't know if you do that or not, John. But it got it done, and I'm sure you're
Yes,
not unhappy
we're
about
very
that.
happy,
Yeah.
very happy.
Okay, so now that you know that you're not going to hear this anywhere else, this is the place to be today.
Inside information.
Inside, yes, okay. So helping early stage companies navigate the investment process. I don't know how many in here have an early stage process, but I'd like the panel to talk a little bit about the best way to catch a fish is to think like one. And how can an early stage scientist begin to think like you? And what should they understand about your organization, and what you want to see if you're going to write a check? You can start.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think if I'm sitting on the entrepreneur side, the biggest thing is looking to solve a problem that needs to be solved, and I call that more like a must-have problem and solution. So it's really going after the biggest problem that you can find, and then finding a solution where anytime you give it to whoever that customer is, it's a no-brainer for them to adopt it. If you get into something where we call it, say, nice to have, it makes it optional. And that's a very dangerous area to be in, and one where investors will tend to shy away from. And so if you think about, from a perspective of screening, if there's a test that's going to be $500, that's based on your COGS, but it does identify breast cancer extremely well. It is really tough to find that screening piece. So it may be a great test and a great solution, but it's just not going to be that must-have where insurance is going to end up paying for that type of test. You've got to have something that makes sense for mass screening, which is closer to that $50 range. That being said, the exception right now is Exact Sciences, which I actually can get away with a higher price test, but it's a stool test. And so if I was to look at that market, the way to really go after that non-compliance with Exact's test, where physicians are ordering the test and patients literally 40 or 50% of the time aren't going through with it, is to say what other modality can you use to identify colon cancer. Obviously blood would be great if you can find the right type of markers there. Now, all of that being said, if you were to approach the clinic for something around eventual funding, the part that we look for is clinician engagement. So when I mentioned there's two things that we try to look for from the venture side. We're looking for a financial return. So any investment we make has to add to the bottom line. We're investing out of a $9 billion endowment, the balance sheet off of that. And so we really want to add to the financial return of that endowment. But there's a strategic piece of that. And the strategic piece means that any company really needs to fit into the a clinician, ideally who's a key opinion leader or a strong champion, but fit into their bailiwick. And it may be as an investigator, it may be as somebody who will adopt use of that test. And so that may be in situations, oncology, it could be a pathologist, but something where that person's like, hey, this is something we've been wanting, we can put the workflow around it or it fits into existing workflow, and we can really help enhance and drive the value of that.
Back to Exact Sciences. I just want to spend a little time talking about that as a diagnostic that you like or don't like, because I don't know if you guys know what they do, but it saves you having to have a colonoscopy. It saves the
Who doesn't want a
procedure.
colonoscopy?
Who wouldn't want one? Who wouldn't want one? I don't know. I don't want one. And you can get the information at home in a package it up and send it in kind of test. What's wrong with that?
Well, it's easy to say you package it up, but collecting it is hard. I mean,
It is not. Go to the
No
bathroom
one-
on a piece of paper.
no one wants to. It's just uncomfortable to do. It's easier to catch your urine. Maybe that's a little bit easier, but stool is just something where it's not pleasant. No one wants to deal with stool.
That's
Some people are fine.
okay.
But the biggest thing is the non-compliance is I've got to mess around with my stool. I've got to put it in the collection device. If I can't get it away to get it to the lab, I've got to put it in my fridge. It's fundamentally it's hard to deal with stool. It's just that's really the biggest issue.
Okay, I'm glad
That's-
to hear you say that, because
Yeah.
I have no problem with that, but
No, but
I used to
you'd
be a med tech.
be on the compliance side. There's
Yeah.
50% that are
Yeah.
compliant and 50% that are not.
Yeah.
But the other thing about Exact, just speaking on it, is it's good if you have actually signs of colon cancer, meaning you've got a little bit of blood in your stool, because they're using the DNA plus they're using the existing stool-based blood test.
Yeah.
And so that combination is what makes it better. What they're not good at is the precancerous polyps and the adenomas that are there. So in a way, what any type of colonoscopy, whether you do it at every 10 years as you're supposed to, or if you have high risk, you're doing it more frequently, it's more than just identifying cancer. It's to identify those polyps or adenomas that they can biopsy. And if you can and so the reason colonoscopy is good in that sense is if you can visualize it and biopsy it or snip it, you will have the ability to prevent colon cancer from coming. And the stool test, the data doesn't support it to be really good and efficacious on that screening part. So that's why it's not it's good as a screening test, but it's not great in that sense.
Gotcha. So we're educating you as well as myself at the same time. Okay. Josh or Rick, you want to answer that same question about?
About Exact Sciences?
No.
Or what sources?
No.
Which
The
question?
best way to
Sorry.
think like you, if they're,
Oh, right.
if you're thinking.
How do you think like
want
an
to fish, yeah. No,
No,
we can
no,
go on from
no,
stool
no,
samples
no,
now. We don't have to stay there.
Well, so like Akil said, we start with a real big clinical need to start with. And so along with that, and if you're trying to think about how we think about it, it has to be a really big need where, ovarian cancer is a big killer. And the big problem is diagnosing it early. So if you can solve that problem, that is a really big one to solve. We have a company that predicts preterm birth. Preterm birth is one of the biggest problems in all of healthcare. If you can determine who is at risk of a preterm birth, you can treat those women and you can delay labor. That's a big problem. So it's got to be, for us, a very clear problem. Then how do you do it? Well, it's got to be at a price that is going to make sense, that is going to lower the overall cost of care. And so one way we think about this, I'll give you 2 examples. One is if you administered our preterm birth test to every pregnant woman in the United States, it would cost about $4.5 or $5 billion to the healthcare system. However, if you acted upon those who were deemed to be at high risk with the most expensive intervention, and then you got the 2-week delay, or on average 2-week delay in labor for all those patients, you'd end up saving on a net basis about $3 billion to the healthcare system. So the economics of this are really, really important, because in that situation, you're not providing a patient, like in the Exact Sciences situation, the ability to avoid a colonoscopy, where, if I don't mind dealing with stool samples, that's a really nice thing to be able to not have a colonoscopy. But in this case, the value to this really accrues to the payer economically. And so it still is a difficult nut to crack, because until you can prove that economic to the payer, it doesn't really matter. So, but we're going to look for, have you done that economic analysis? If every patient that your test is suited for gets your test and pays that price, or somebody pays that price, there better be a net savings if they act upon the outcome of your test. You'd be amazed how many aren't. We had one. It was an interesting test. It was a genomic assay, I think, or I forget what it was, but it was a test for gestational diabetes. And the existing way that gestational diabetes is diagnosed is a pretty inexpensive glucose test. It may not be all that pleasant for pregnant women, and I get that, but it's pretty inexpensive. So to come in with a $1,000 blood test to replace that just isn't going to happen. It just won't happen.
Question?
Yeah.
Yeah. I understand the motivation to have trying to reduce the cost.
Can you stand up so the rest of the room
Oh,
can hear you?
sorry.
Because we have no mic.
I understand that you say you're interested in things that will reduce the cost significantly. Just for background, we're part of a startup that's trying to do very, very low cost infectious disease diagnosis. I've gotten a lot of pushback from potential investors and stuff, because we're targeting very low price, still enough to be very profitable, but and dramatically lower than what's out there. And we get a lot of pushback that we should be maximizing the price rather than trying to reduce it. We should be, trying to squeeze every bit of money that we possibly could. That the investors are terrified that if you talk about being able to, sell a test for $1 in Africa, that you're just do-gooders who are not interested in serious profit making. And so how do you, on the one hand, get the message, which in theory you want to have point-of-care diagnostics that are really cheap, without scaring away investors because you're planning to make them really cheap? And also the potential corporate backers also, who see you as potentially an enormous threat to their existing legacy stuff because you're a fraction of the cost and higher quality and better speed and all the rest of it.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
How do you balance that?
Go ahead.
I'll do my best to answer the
Thank
question. So I think Josh and Akil sort of alluded to sort of within our environment, who different stakeholders may be, whether it's the patient, the service provider, the system, or the payer. We all have very different perspectives in whether or not or how the test in this case is paid for. And I would just suggest that we're a double bottom line fund, so I invest in, what that means is I have to have strategic relevance to my hospital system, so it's strategically important to us. It has to have the potential for top quintile return. So all of us want to go on and raise other funds, and we have the expectation that whatever I'm investing is going to give us a great ROI. So, but just going back to sort of that strategic fit, in the case of your $1 or $2 or $3 test, whatever that might be, if that's going to dramatically change, care pathway or how much it costs, to either treat the patient more quickly and more effectively for whatever the problem is, then we're more inclined to make the investment. So it probably more, even if it's niche-y, it doesn't give me sort of the $1 billion exit potential. I don't necessarily have the same baggage that a purely financial investor might have. We might do that deal, and so it's so we want to think like you want to think like your investor. You have to understand the equities of that investor. What the problem is I'm trying to solve. I don't know a hospital system, for example, that doesn't that 8 hospital-acquired infections and the way that we treat them isn't top 3 on their list of priorities. Right, and so, but I'm not sure. I mean, we actually do have a good idea how big that market is. It's not unattractive, but I'm not curing cancer.
One of the other things is it's great to be able to sell a test for $1. But I don't know, does it cost you 90 cents to sell it, and therefore you have a 10-cent margin? And how big is the market for how many tests? There are other things within the medical device world that we looked at where this is a really nice little device, but you have to sell 500 million of them in order to make any money, which is often very difficult. So we tend to gravitate towards the higher value tests because you don't need as many to make money. So that's a factor as well. But if the test can be delivered for $1 and you're going to get $1 and it's going to cost 10 cents on your part, and there's a big enough market, that's not bad. Yeah. But if there's a total market of 5,000 tests out there, that's you get my point.
Sure. So let's just talk a little bit about identifying an investor fit and what it's like working with you. What's your due diligence process? What do you want to see when somebody walks in the door? What don't you want to see? How open are you to, first-time entrepreneurs? That kind of thing. Rick, you want to start?
Yeah, we love first-time entrepreneurs. It's the 3 of us that have strategic investments. All of us were founders at inception of companies, and it's our favorite stage. So I think just by affinity, we do that. I focus on seed investments. I believe it's harder, but I also believe if you do it well, you get a better return. And in particular, in our region, there's never a fear of missing out on a deal, and so I see them all. I get to cherry pick the deals that we want to do, and generally we think that's going to result in a great return for us. And for those first-time entrepreneurs, they're going to come back because generally they have a good experience, with the 3 of us. Did I answer what was the? So that was that.
How do you gather intelligence?
Oh, how do I do due diligence?
Yeah, and
So,
monitor sectors that you want to see.
Right. So in general, the sectors that we're drawn to are the ones that are more capital efficient. It is fantastic to be a strategic investor at a hospital system because I have a hospital full of experts. Whether when it's related to the science, or whether it's related to how it's inserted into, in this case, the workflow, or perhaps where it's inserted into the industry. I have people that take my calls, and so it's really easy for me to do that. We will often call other health systems. We are as is Cleveland, a member of the Strategic Ventures Group, and it's my peers and 25 other health systems, and we sort of share perspectives all the time. Probably not something you see across venture, but we collaborate because we want to share deal flow and improve medicine. And so we have a really significant network to do due diligence on specific sectors. So I have the ability to know what the competitive environment is. By the way, just as an entrepreneur, you should know your competitive environment better than I do, because if I think I know it better than you, you're going to shake my confidence. So make sure that you're aware of that. But because we're going to figure this out. I would say this from a due diligence perspective, even for the deals that we don't lead, we dig in, I think, more than you might expect from a hospital system strategic investor. So we're all professional investors. I don't want to miss anything. Let's see. They probably would be difference.
Yeah. You want to talk a little bit about that, Josh?
Sure. So we welcome first-time entrepreneurs. Envision was a first-time entrepreneur. We have had a number of companies with first-time entrepreneurs. We pride ourselves on we will look at anything that people bring, and we'll talk to everybody who comes in. So kind of an open door. The thing that we're going to focus on first is that clinical need, and I'll say the value proposition that you have. Including in that, you will always get the question, if everyone was treated with this and they paid the price that you're asking for, what would the economics be? And you'd be amazed at how many people have no idea. They have no clue. They've never even thought about that. And so I would agree with you. If I think I know more about any one of these things than you do, that's a big problem. You need to be educating me, not the other way around. But we're going to focus on the clinical need, the value proposition, and assume that your test does exactly what you do with sensitivity and specificity or whatever that you quote. I'm not even going to deal with that until we figure out if you can do what you say you can do. Does it matter? And does anybody care? If we get past that, then we have advisors and different folks through our network who we will bring in to help look at the studies you've done, the data that you have, whatever it is that you may have as a technology behind it. But that's how we start. I think you said, what's it like working with us? Awful. It's not good. We try to be pretty friendly to entrepreneurs, and we would invite you to talk to our CEOs and find out how we work with people.
Just maybe, that's what I add. I think Josh just made me think about it. When you're coming in to pitch, whether it's one-on-one or one to few in a venture pitch, I think one of the smartest things that you can do is one, demonstrate that you've actually talked to the prospective customer and understand what the value is, how they would use it, how it impacts workflow. But even better is bring one of them to the meeting. And then have them explain, this is how I use it. It's I'm always looking for early evidence, especially at the seed stage, early evidence of product market fit with what you have. And by the way, I've 47 seed investments. I have gotten product market fit right the first time, exactly one time. And so I know you don't have it, but I'm looking for these signals that you're sort of really on that you're on the right track, but two, you have the empathy to get there. Sorry, I just wanted to add that.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'll add one quick thing before Keel says Dan goes, and that is when you meet with us, we're going to ask you a lot of questions, and we want it to be interactive. And when people get defensive or don't like the questions we're asking, it just sets off all sorts of red flags about we can't work with you. So just be open and let's have a conversation. And if we're asking a stupid question, you can tell us it's a stupid question, and then you can answer it and convince us of why it's a dumb question. That's okay. But it's when people dig in and get defensive and try to argue with you about stuff that it's like, well, why do I want to work with you then?
Oh, absolutely. Because it's about ethics and workability, And I was told early on by my mentor for buyers, find somebody that's coachable. If you don't appear coachable, why would I give you money, right? We're gonna be your coach, we're not gonna be your boss. We're gonna wanna see you succeed to get on the same page once we make an investment. So it should be at least in the beginning, a friendly exchange of ideas and not something that's adversarial. Although no CEO CEO jobs are always temporary, it's just a matter of how temporary they are. Because startup CEOs, sometimes if it's very successful, will be placed by CEOs that understand how to build companies to the next stage, and that's just a fact of life. So I want to just ask Akil to talk a little bit about the future. Because I think what you're doing at Cleveland Clinic is the future. Where the clinic, and you too, Rick, where I know about, where the hospitals get involved with the decision of financing what they want to see in the future. But what about, CVS and Aetna and Google and Amazon and JP Morgan all getting into the game and Apple? What's the future going to look like for diagnostics? Is it going to be on our smartwatches?
So let me answer your question in two ways. One is first around the groups that you kind of mentioned. The second one maybe more around the tech. But on the group side, I think we're going to see providers getting more and more engaged on innovation. And I think even in the last 3 years, the number of hospital systems that now have innovation and venture arms, even smaller systems, is skyrocketing. I was at a breakfast this morning where the number of health systems that were there was just staggering, and it was all around, and there's other groups there as well, but everyone's trying to find the right deals to partner on. But more importantly, were the other groups that were there, which were the payers. So there was probably in this group of 120, there was probably at least 30 payer groups there represented with new business development, ventures, corp dev. And I think that what we'll see is more partnering between organizations on the payer side, on industry side, on the clinical care side, on developing these companies, because you really need to have all those pieces solved. The regulatory piece, I think, will solve itself. Either it's going to be safe and efficacious, it has to be. But the payment side and the clinical care piece are equally as hard, but they're not not regulated in that sense. And so I think we'll start seeing that shape, and I think we'll see the private funds participate as well alongside that. Now, that being said, on where tech, I think, is headed on the diagnostic side is, I think we'll start seeing a lot of IT paired with diagnostics. So it's not a blood test by itself, but it's going to be some layer of IT architecture on top of that. So it'll be around data, and the value of that data is still unknown or hard to quantify or hard to value, but there has to be that element of it. So I'll give you maybe one example. So if you're thinking about pharmacogenomics and you're thinking of saying, can I find a test, and this is already out there, but there's a test that will assess whether a patient is the right fit for a given medication, and Plavix is one good example. There's lots of evidence of that, but that's just a diagnostic test. But if you were to layer on a macro level population on top of that, and for a payer, they really want that right drug fit to the right patient, because that provides better outcome. And why provide a drug if it's not going to work on a patient? You can go to something else. But they don't have a good way of layering population data on top of that. So even though patients will be covered by an insurance company for probably anywhere from 18 months to 2 years on average before they flip over and go to another payer, that the population segment doesn't change overall. And so if you can layer a data piece overlying the pharmacogenomics, it's more than just individual matching, but you can prepare for the cost and even work a system with a startup around a PMPM model. And so you're not paying per test, but you're paying on a population or a capitation piece.
Future.
So I hadn't thought about that, adding data to identify populations, that's really interesting.
It's AI plus?
Yeah, no, I think we're still long on genomics. Going forward, I think what you're going to see is reimbursement will eventually get at least more sorted out than it is today. I think we're short on stopgap measures. So in the very, I would say, my most effective, my currently best investment that I've made around the diagnostic space is actually a service hub that addresses prior authorization for diagnostic clinics. And so we found a way to make money out of this sort of knee-jerk reaction to require prior auth and not pay. Right? That one's growing way faster than we thought it would grow, and we're thrilled about it, but we're still long on getting reimbursement figured out in genetic molecular diagnostics.
It's the death of venture capital, as you said.
Correct.
Okay, I think we're timed out. Are there any burning questions from the audience? Robbie?
Right now, I'm on both sides of this.
Stand
As
up.
an angel investor,
Because the rest of the room can't hear you. Because you're talking.
both as an angel investor as well as helping a young company raise money. So you mentioned about the funding becoming difficult for the early stage companies, and Akhil mentioned about the non-diluted funds being used to reach certain level, and then you go after getting the funding. But non-diluted funding, which is typically coming from the government side of it, we know that has either steadied at certain level or it is down by a couple of $1 billion at some point. So, who will play that role to bring the product to that level? Is it a group of small angel investors who could put together a couple $3 million and do the job so that it goes to that level? Or is it also an expectation by the entrepreneur that I'm not expecting like huge $100 million sell out here? If I get $20 million out of this, I will be happy. And the experience as an investor was that a young entrepreneur out of Stanford developed a device, sold it in less than 4 years for $20 million. She probably got, I got a 3x. She probably got $3-4 million, but for 3 or 4 years of work, $3 or $4 million for a young person is not a small money. So then it's a question of the expectation on the side of both entrepreneurs and investors. So any comments on that?
Was there a question there?
So actually, I have a point of view.
Okay.
The answer to the question is yes. I think that the gap's going to be filled by angels. Part of what we're doing as a health system is educating our community. We're a very wealthy set of counties that we service, a lot of wealthy individuals that don't know how to invest in the space. We're teaching. And so absolutely we are mobilizing that environment, and it's going to benefit our health system because we'll create an economy around early stage health tech. And in a long time that will hopefully make us more like Cleveland. By the way, thank you for mentioning Innova in the same breath as Cleveland Clinic.
I gotta tell you, I'm from Fairfax County. I grew up.
What's up?
My mother was a
Right.
nurse, my father was a doctor. I know the system. I've used the system. So thank you all. Let's get it.